start us off, man.
You just did. Let's go, baby! We are back. A new week, a new episode. The one that we've been waiting for and you've all been waiting for. It is the official mock. Well, actually, our official draft here at Squeeze the Juice.
Yep.
It is our official draft. It's very exciting because we also have a special guest joining us. He is adequately, not extremely, but adequately known in the Detroit sports online community.
Yes.
I suppose.
Supposedly.
I guess so.
It is my brother-in-law, Tyler, a.k.a. Fueled by Motown.
Is this the clap one?
Yep.
Thank you.
Round of applause for him. I'll have his link in the description. Also, maybe on the screen right here. We'll see how it goes. But you guys can go check him out. He's on everything Lions, but also everything Detroit sports. So we're happy to have him here because he will have the honor today of bestowing his picks upon us.
Yes, very excited. Wall-to-wall Detroit sports coverage. He is the man.
Yeah.
All the Detroit news, it just pops up my feed. I'm like, Tyler's got it. He's got it. So
He's on
I
it.
never have to worry about it. So it's always fun seeing that on Twitter. And we're excited to have him because I think it's going to be electric. I think it's going to be a little rambunctious. And we cannot wait to get
That's
started.
a beautiful word to describe it.
Beautiful word.
Yeah, you guys blessed me with picking the Lions, so I appreciate that.
Not once,
Twice.
but twice.
I know for both picks, so I'm excited to get into an argument about why my pick was wrong, but
Why Evan thinks it's wrong?
yeah,
Or right. We don't know.
I might be totally on board, or I might be
Yeah.
totally off the board. We'll
yeah,
see.
We'll see.
Well, I hope you're going off the wall.
I expect some things out of you too today.
I might get triggered.
I might be coming for you.
You know what? I love that. Come
knows?
after me.
Who knows?
I want all the smoke.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
But each of us, we're going to do it how we did our mock draft a couple weeks ago. We'll rotate through picks. This time it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then we'll each rotate every 3 picks. I have the honor of having the first pick, and then Evan goes 2, Tyler goes 3, and so on as we rotate all through them all.
Works beautifully.
It
1, 2,
does.
3.
It does work well. It does work well. We'll each have 10 picks. I will actually have 1 extra with the Chiefs. Just that's how it worked out. Also with Miami forfeiting their pick, Evan would
Yeah.
probably have another pick. So
Yeah, but it's fine.
no, it's okay. I'm just saying you'd probably have
Less
another pick.
less stress.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I wouldn't want to pick for the Dolphins anyway. They have what they need. They got Ramsey.
Yeah.
They got
Yeah, they're
everybody.
fine.
They're fine. So as we get into this, I guess should we just jump right in? Or do you have anything to say before we get going here?
I'm ready to go. Let's jump right in. Unless Tyler's got something to say. I'm
I'm
gassed up.
I think we're gonna spend too much time talking about the picks, so we should probably just get right into it.
That's fair.
love
We're
that.
not trying to make
I
this
love
too
that.
long, but we'll see how long it goes. So we shall enter the draft room, folks. And officially, I am on the clock with the Panthers.
Okay, so tell us what you're thinking. What are you thinking here?
You know, the Panthers it's pretty much there's no reason that they don't go quarterback. It's pretty obvious that they're going to go quarterback. They've literally signed every other piece kind of around the offense ready to go, with bringing in Thielen, bringing in, unfortunately, for Lions fans, DJ Chark, which I think we should have kept him. They signed Miles Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they have a trusty offensive line. They have a great young defense. So, obviously they could add pieces, another receiver maybe another guy on the line, but that can come down the road after, this pick. But, you pretty much need a quarterback to plug and play.
Yeah, and they gave up a haul that tells you that it's quarterback, right? They gave up their franchise,
Yes.
Offensive piece, DJ Moore.
Evan loves DJ Moore.
I
Yeah.
love DJ Moore.
So they gave up a lot to get up here, so it's a quarterback for sure.
And I think it's the worst kept secret as to who it is.
At this point,
I know. For a while it was, could Levis be up there? It's probably Young, and then there's the big period of where it was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be Stroud. And I was really on Stroud for a long time thinking about it because I'm like, Stroud to me is just the vibe to him is Carolina. Like
Right.
not that it isn't Houston, not that he can't work in Houston if he goes there, but I just sense him more than any other quarterback. He is a Carolina guy, just the vibe of him and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's logical. Doesn't matter what people say is hurting him, as in height.
Yeah.
You got to take the best quarterback on the board. And to me, with my first pick, I'm taking Bryce Young.
I mean, you're going to get no complaints out of anyone here unless unless Tyler's got something to say.
No.
I love Bryce Young. I think he's a phenomenal talent. Little small, but I don't think it matters because he's so instinctual. He's so aware of the defense collapsing in on him. He is truly one of those guys that I think you'll have confidence in when the game is on the line. And I don't think you can say that with a lot of quarterbacks coming right out of college, but I think he has that in him. He has that clutch gene. And I think amongst all the other things that he has, I think that's the number one thing that I love about him. He's a leader, and he is totally capable of leading the Panthers into the next decade plus of competitive NFC South football.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more you could say about him. Everything you want is in there. And, you know, you go complain about size, but look what Russell Wilson has done in his career. Not saying he hasn't had his ups and downs, but, you know, he was looked at as a small guy, and he got it done. So, with all being said, onward. Pick 2, Evan, you have the Texans.
Yes, so...
There's been some more mystery around this pick recently.
Yeah,
I
so
know.
Schefter, all the guys, Daniel Jeremiah, they're all reporting now that we don't know what Texas or the Houston Texans are going to do, but it feels like they're not going QB. Now, my thought process is CJ Stroud feels like the guy here. But I'm hearing way too much. New head coach D'Amico Ryans coming in from San Francisco, the DC. It feels like Houston's going to punt on a quarterback. Like, that's just the vibe I'm getting now. I think they're going to punt on the QB. I think they're going to get their guy in Will Anderson Jr. here. I think they take Will Anderson Jr.
Okay.
And I think they either wait to get the quarterback next year or they use 12 and maybe a pick from Cleveland and trade up maybe into the top 6 and take a quarterback there. Maybe Levis, maybe Stroud if he's still available, maybe Richardson. Who knows? We don't know how the draft is going to shake out. But I think number 2 is Will Anderson. And I don't agree with it because if I'm Nick Caserio, I don't know how I get in front of a microphone that night and tell my fans, we're going to wait till 2024 for a quarterback. It just doesn't make sense to me. You cannot roll out Davis Mills for another year. You just cannot. But Houston's going to Houston.
Yeah.
I think they go Will Anderson. And let's just be fair to Will Anderson. He's my number 1 player in the draft. I think he's the best football player in the draft. He would have went number 1 overall last year. He would have went above Hutch. He would have went above Trayvon Walker. It would have been above everyone. That's how good of a football player he is. And I don't fault them for taking him, but I just think you got to take your franchise guy. And if he's not there, so be it, right? You're not forced to take quarterback, but I don't know. I think there's plenty of talent in this quarterback class to not take one.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Enough said.
I got off my chest. Houston's been bugging me with this pick.
I believe it. I believe it.
I mean, honestly, it could all be a smokescreen, and it could all be, them just playing the game of the draft season. But, I mean, I'm not really sure what they're going to do. I wouldn't be shocked if they went Will Anderson. I wouldn't be shocked if they went Stroud. So, I mean, this pick makes some sense. And if, like you said, if they don't think that their quarterback's on the board, then D'Amico Ryans just takes his defensive, cornerstone, and he had a great defensive line in San Francisco, and he starts one off here in Houston with Will Anderson. So,
and they need it too. Like, Houston's defense is not great up front.
Didn't they sign a new quarterback? Didn't they sign? I mean, it was either them or Atlanta. I thought someone's. Oh yeah. I was like, someone has Kyle. Someone has Kyle Allen. Was it Atlanta who signed Kyle Allen?
I'm not sure.
Oh, they got Taylor Heineke. Kyle Allen, I think, is on Houston.
Well, I think you're right, but regardless.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was just thinking about
Mills,
that.
Kyle Allen, it doesn't matter.
It's not enough.
Right.
It's just, for me, it's more of a selling point to the fans. It's hard to say we're going to wait till 2024 and go through another year of 3 wins max, 4 wins max. I just think that's tough because this team has been horrible for 2 straight years. They went through the Deshaun Watson mess, it just feels like now's the time to get your guy and to start a new era. And taking Will Anderson Jr., phenomenal player. I just think you need a new face. And I'm not saying Will can't be that face, but usually the face of the team is the QB. And you're not going to go anywhere if you don't have that right here, right now, in my opinion. But
Absolutely.
if they want to wait till 2024, take Caleb Williams or Drake May. You know I love Caleb Williams. It's been talked about a lot on the show. I'm not going to fault them for it. If they got Caleb, I mean, I like Caleb more than anyone in this class.
I know you do.
So, I mean,
You like Caleb Williams better than anybody else in the business.
so like, I'm not going to be mad if that's how it ends up shaking out. But I don't know. I don't see it happening that way. Will Anderson's the pick, but man, it's tough.
All right. Arizona Cardinals. Tyler, 3:00. What are the thoughts?
Well, in this draft, we decided that we weren't actually going to make trades, but we talk about it. In this scenario, I think that it's extremely likely that
Yes.
Arizona would try to get out of this pick, even if it meant they take less value than they originally hoped they would have gotten. But for this exercise, we have to stay. And
That's exercise. I love that.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, for me, you don't really need a quarterback. So it's defense. And in my opinion, it's got to be Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson. So I'm going to take Jalen Carter with this pick because he's arguably the most talented player in the draft. And obviously, there's a bunch of off-the-field concerns, but he very well could be the best player in this draft.
And he fell.
Probably one of the very few players in this draft that actually have Hall of Fame talent.
Agreed.
So I guess you just hope that the coaching staff and the locker room can come alongside him and make him work out and, grow up a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do Jalen Carter. So
Alrighty.
for the Cardinals.
I hope that, and if they do, I hope he does grow up because he's got a quarterback that needs to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
You have two pieces on both sides of the ball that are just completely immature from, I guess, a fan perspective or outside perspective. But Jalen Carter, absolutely one of the few guys with Hall of Fame potential. What he brings, his size, his speed, his power, it is rare to find that kind of talent in the draft. Mm-hmm. And for him to be available, I mean, there were talks about him going at number 1 overall. And then everything kind of got messy and the whole, situation with him allegedly speed racing, drag racing, and then showing up to the that happened at the combine. Like all that news broke out at the combine. Then the pro day came overweight, couldn't finish the drills. It's tough because like all that stuff happened, but yet you turn on the film and Jalen Carter is an absolute game wrecker. And he's got that Chris Jones type, and Chris Jones, I think, is a Hall of Fame kind of player. And that's Jalen Carter's comp. And if you're adding Chris Jones to your defense, that's lucky stuff. He is one of a kind. It's just, going to come down to the character concerns and
right.
if he's mentally going to lock in for, the team. Because that's really the only questions that remain with Jalen Carter.
And unfortunately for us, we don't have all the information that all the teams get access to throughout this process. So, if the teams feel comfortable, if in this case the Arizona Cardinals feel comfortable with, Jalen Carter, the person, and his football character and his work ethic and that pro day thing, doesn't seem to be a long-term issue, then you probably got one of the biggest steals of the draft at pick number 3. So,
oh yeah,
absolutely. All right, back to me. Pick 4, the Indianapolis Colts. Love them, but they're really becoming the Browns.
What do you mean by that?
You want to know what I mean by that? You ever see that Browns jersey where the guy has every single quarterback they've drafted year after year all the way down?
Yes.
That is what the Colts have been turning into.
except with veterans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except with veterans. You got Ryan, you got Wentz, you got Brissett,
Yes.
you got Rivers,
Yep.
you got Luck, you got Everybody. Last time you trusted somebody, yes, it was luck, but you can say, Peyton Manning was the man before it all happened.
They've been going with the formula that if they just build a championship team minus the quarterback, that they can trade or add a veteran in free agency, and that will be enough to put them over the top. And it seems as though you're leaning in the direction that it's time to stop with that plan and start building a team around the quarterback.
Absolutely. And, the only one that you could have said that slightly looked like trustworthy, but they only gave you 1 year, was kind of Phillip Rivers. Like, for whatever reason, Phillip Rivers worked with the Colts. Matt Ryan, no. Wentz, no. And, we'll see what happens with, right now, Gardner Minshew. But, I think they take a quarterback here. And obviously, the big discussion is, would they take Richardson? Do they take Levis? I mean, the upside to Richardson is crazy, but to me, knowing the Colts and who they are, I think they take Will Levis. It just seems like a Colts move.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of discussions that he may not go that high. It may be more rich because they're like, we just need to change. We just need to change what we're doing here. Obviously, new head coach, that might be another factor on what goes on with them.
Yeah.
But I am taking Will Levis 4th overall.
Wow. I mean, all right. So Will Levis has just gone ahead of C.J. Stroud. That just happened. Okay. I'm gonna compose myself because that is
and he went over Anthony Richardson
and A. Rich.
Yeah.
Yep.
And A. Rich. Okay.
Stress
I do not like Will Levis at all.
I know you don't.
He was horrible his last year at Kentucky. I mean, you can make your case about the supporting cast around him, sure, but
10 interceptions last season.
Dreadful. He didn't show up. I believe he had 99 passing yards against Tennessee. Tennessee had one of the worst passing defenses in the SEC in the country, and he couldn't even start at Penn State.
So
he couldn't start. He got Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford beat him out for the starting quarterback job. Sean Clifford stinks.
So I'll play devil's advocate because I also do not like Will Levis. But the argument against all this is that he played on a garbage, mediocre team with arguably one of the worst offensive lines in that entire conference.
In the SEC.
So he was forced to, throw balls he otherwise wouldn't, and pretty much put the team on his back, and it forced a lot of turnovers and a lot of bad decisions. So that's kind of the argument against all that. But I'm with you. I'm not a Will Levis fan. I mean, he has some traits, and that's kind of. That's what the appeal is that he has some abilities that could be developed, but I'm not a big fan of him being the second quarterback off the board.
I think that's a horrible pick.
The thing is, I think
that's a horrible pick.
I think the Colts are going to Colts.
Look, I don't disagree. I think the Colts want Levis.
So this is less of what you would do and a more of just projecting.
I think
the
they
Colts
want
would do in this
him. They
situation.
like him, and I think they're too. Like, there's Stroud's up and down, and then there's too much worry that who knows what Anthony Richardson's going to be, and they're just going to be like, okay, Levis.
Okay.
I think that's the Colts move.
No, I don't think you're wrong.
I think they're. I agree. Stroud and Richardson are better, but I think the Colts. That's the Colts.
I honestly think if this situation played itself out, I think that they would take Stroud because I think that they just want the pro-ready day one starter that's still young that they can develop, but sees that they have a high floor for. That they can plug right into the offense, take advantage of Jonathan Taylor's prime, but
and I don't disagree.
It's your pick.
I think if they're picking between Stroud and Richardson, I think they take Stroud.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think there's something about I definitely think Stroud and Richardson are probably better. But I am truly thinking as what I expect of the Colts, and that's going to take Will Levis.
Okay,
they just a guy like that,
fine.
and I don't know why, but. The intangibles for Stroud and Richardson are through the roof, but they're like, no. They're too locked in certain ways, like we talked about how they're built. They're so focused on, we can just plug a quarterback in. Mm-hmm. Maybe they change that and get a quarterback now, but they'll be like, all right, we don't want one that's too mobile because we got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. That's too much of a concern.
I mean, to your point a little bit, they do have Gardner Minshew, who is a proven quarterback in this league. So maybe the plan there was let's get Minshew and give ourselves the flexibility to where if our guy, Levis or Richardson, someone who's a little bit more toolsy, who needs developing, they get that guy and can sit him for a year or two, and they can play someone like Minshew for the meantime. So maybe that's the plan, but I mean, I'm with Evan here. I mean, I'm trying to defend.
No, I think it's
your
funny
pick
because
a
I
little bit,
can't see his eyes. That's why it's funny.
But
it's
Tyler's
all right.
trying to be nice.
It's
but
all right, man. No,
So-
Deep down,
I
he
think-
wants to destroy Will Levis.
I think. I think Stroud is better. I think Rich is better, but I think Will Levis will be the Colts pick just because of the Colts.
I think you're right. I think Will Levis will be a Colt, regardless of who's on the board.
I know. There's just,
I still think it's a terrible pick.
I don't disagree. I'm thinking logically of what I expect. So
All right, so
I would take Stroud personally on the straight personal note, but I'm thinking in this moment I'm thinking what the automatic position is probably going to end up being. But anyway, on to the next 5th, Seattle. Evan, you got Seattle twice, big dog.
yeah, I'm a big Seahawk guy today. I think this pick is obvious for Seattle. I think Seattle's very similar to Detroit in terms of what they need and just the team structure. Seattle was horrible against the run last year, and they were closer to the bottom third in pressure rate than they were the upper third. So basically, they weren't really getting after the quarterback much, and they were getting gashed on the ground. Enter Tyree Wilson. No Jalen Carter, no Will Anderson. I think he is the obvious pick here for Seattle. You get a guy that physically could be, I think, one of the more upside guys in the draft. I think he has a lot of room to grow there. Mm-hmm. His first step is not elite, but he is tremendous in the ground game. I think he could easily set the edge, and I think his pass rush game will develop with time. I think Tyree Wilson, I don't think he'll be the best edge rusher in the draft. I think that's going to be Will Anderson, but I think Tyree Wilson is going to be damn good. I'm very content if I'm Seattle and Tyree Wilson is on the board. I'm very content taking him there. I think I'm not going to say a home run pick, but I think he is a very, very nice piece to add to a defensive line that needs help, similarly to the Lions.
So Tyree Wilson is probably one of my favorite players in this draft. I'm just going to say it. I really wanted him for Detroit in this situation. That was who my target was. So one of the biggest things, most important things to have as an edge rusher is length. And Tyree Wilson may be one of the longest edge rushers that we've seen in quite some time.
Yes.
I put this note down not because I really wanted to point it out that Wilson is 6'6", and he has a wingspan of 86 inches. Giannis Antetokounmpo is 7'3" and has a wingspan of 87 inches. So just 1 inch less wingspan, yet is almost a foot shorter than Giannis. So that goes to show how long his arms are, which tells you that he wasn't the most productive in college, but he has immense upside. And I love this pick. I'll just be honest. I think that he's one of the most sneaky players in this draft, and he's one of my favorite players for the Detroit Lions to get at 6. So I like this pick a lot. And
So you're you hope he falls in real time.
In real life, I hope he falls because that's who I want. That's who I want at 6, quite honestly. But he's not the most productive in college, but immense upside. So I'm a big fan of the pick. So
And don't sleep on Anthony Richardson here. There was kind of mutual interest between Anthony Richardson and Seattle, it seemed like, at the combine and in the pre-draft process. And Geno Smith, I believe, is on the record saying, I wouldn't mind having a guy come in to mentor. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if Anthony Richardson was the pick here. And STJ Mock 1.0, we had a Rich going to Seattle.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately Seattle looks at their board and says, we can win with Geno. We need help on the defensive end. And Tyree Wilson projects to be one of the best guys stopping the run on the edge and with the upside to be a pretty good pass rusher. Maybe not an elite pass rusher or a very, upper echelon pass rusher, but I think a pass rusher that can really provide upside there. So I love this pick for Seattle. I'm envious of Seattle. I think the 5th pick in this draft is so good. There are so many options. I could slide to them at 5, and they're probably going to take who many Lions fans want at 6. So that's where it gets unfortunate, but I think Seattle's in a great spot.
And now the first Detroit pick.
Someone say the draft starts here.
Oh.
All right, so let me map it out a little bit for you. Okay, so like we said, that we weren't going to do any trades. So realistically, if this situation played itself out, the Cardinals would not be selecting at 3, more than likely. A quarterback would be gone at 3, and a quarterback would be gone at 4, meaning that one of the defensive players in Carter or Wilson would be available here. But that's not the situation we're in. But I just want to explain that because in my true prediction, one of those guys would be there. If it's Wilson, I'm taking him. If it's Carter, I'm not. I do not think that Detroit can afford to, and nor do I think that they're truly interested in someone with as many red flags as Jalen Carter has. So in this situation, I may upset some people here. I'm gonna be honest.
Pull that mic off.
So I am a big fan of Anthony Richardson. Okay, I am. However, I just don't think that the Detroit Lions would select him, even though I would love that pick. I just don't think that they want a quarterback. So if I'm trying to put some realism in it, if this situation played itself out, Devon Witherspoon is going to be the pick. So that's who I'm picking here. And I know that Evan isn't a fan because we talked before we started that he is not a fan of this pick. So I'll give him a second to unleash on me. But I just don't think that Anthony Richardson, as much of a fan as I am of him, and I know Evan is, and I know Justin is, and I think he has one of the most biggest upside potential in the draft, and I would absolutely love that pick. I don't think Detroit's really interested in a quarterback. I think it's all a game, so I'm not going to project that.
Fair.
So, and if this situation played itself out, the most realistic selection for Detroit would be Devon Witherspoon. I like Devon Witherspoon. I don't love the value, but this is just how the board played out. Honestly, I've heard some rumblings from Terry Foster from Woodward Sports. He leaked out today that Detroit is interested in moving up. I truly think Detroit doesn't like pick 6 because I think that they're afraid of a situation like this happening. Because I think if this exact situation presented itself, the pick would either be Witherspoon or it would be trade back. That's truly what my opinion is. But we can't trade. So I'm taking Witherspoon because I think that's the next realistic option. So I'll let Evan go because I know that he has some things to say.
So before I unleash on Witherspoon, I do want to say that you are correct. This situation playing itself out, I almost think it doesn't matter because if you replace Jalen Carter at 3 with Stroud, which would probably happen, someone would trade up and get Stroud. It might even be the Lions. Mm-hmm. But if somebody traded up to get, let's say someone traded up to get 3, they're probably not taking Jalen Carter. They're probably taking C.J. Stroud. So I think regardless, Witherspoon is probably the pick at 6.
Unless Seattle is a big fan of Carter, which they could be.
Right.
And in that case, I think Tyree Wilson would be the pick because I think Brad Holmes, we've heard Brad Holmes say it earlier in his tenure in Detroit, how much length is important to him. And he hasn't said it a lot recently, and I think there's a reason for it, because if he starts talking about how much length is important, that really keys in on who they really like. So personally, I think Tyree Wilson and Witherspoon are towards the top of their board. So, but yes, in this situation, there is a very good situation where it wouldn't have mattered whether a quarterback went at 3 or not, and this would have been the pick anyway.
I could have taken quarterback, but guess what? Witherspoon is now the pick at 6. And I'm just going to be a little disrespectful. How the hell is an Illinois football player that's number 1 quarterback? How is he a top 10 pick? Illinois football does not produce players, okay? Kirby Joseph, 3rd-round gem. You're lucky to find one of those guys. He could have gone anywhere. I don't think it matters. Illinois does not produce elite talent. So that's my first concern with Devon Witherspoon is because he's from Illinois. Big Ten, Illinois was run heavy. They were run heavy. They did not get a ton of shootouts. They were defensive minded and run heavy. Who's to say they even played anyone that was good? Did they even play Ohio State?
They played Michigan.
Michigan does not pass the ball. That was the Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards show.
I mean, I got a stat for you. Devon Witherspoon only allowed a 24.6 QBR when targeted last season.
And who did he play? Am I supposed to be impressed by J.J. McCarthy in year one?
Rocky Lombardi.
Am I supposed to be impressed by? I'm pretty sure they played MSU. I think Michigan State beat Illinois. Am I supposed to be impressed with Peyton Thorne? I'm a Michigan State alum. Peyton Thorne stinks. Witherspoon, 5'11". He's small. I look at the other guys. Gonzalez, 6'1". Joey Porter Jr., 6'2". Those are the second guy. I'm a JPJ guy. He's 6'2". He's got 3 inches on Devon Witherspoon. He's 181. I mean, come on. He's 22 years old. That if you're looking for upside, Gonzalez has more upside athletically, and he's only 20. So for me, if you go corner here, I think Gonzalez and Joey Porter Jr. probably better options. Look, I know Witherspoon's got this dog in him. He's got this mox. He's got this swagger. Guys, he played at Illinois in a run-heavy system. He didn't play anyone. You're going to look good in the Big Ten when you don't go against elite passing offenses. You know what Gonzalez went up against? Elite passing offenses. Caleb Williams, Utah, DTR at UCLA, Chip Kelly. I mean, look, Oregon's pass defense sucked. And Gonzalez, let's be honest, I'm not that impressed with him either. But at least he went up against decent competition. Witherspoon I don't even think Illinois played Ohio State, the number 1 passing offense in the Big Ten. They didn't face them. Mm-hmm. So,
you think this is another Okuda?
I think it's worse than Okuda. I think it's worse than Okuda.
Right.
Because at least with Okuda, you had some injury. Like he got played by injuries, and then the Patricia era just kind of wrecked him from the start. I think there's some reasoning behind why he wasn't able to succeed in Detroit. I'm just not. I'm not sold on Witherspoon as a player. I'm not, and I hate cornerback at 6. Maybe I'm a little Okuda scarred taking a quarterback 2 years ago at 3. But man, I just cannot get behind a cornerback, especially when you sign Cam Sutton, you sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you signed Emmanuel Mosley. I know that's 2 guys on 1-year deals, and you only have 2 signed through next year. I get that, but you win at the tip of the sword. You need someone either on the defensive line, and I know there's not really anyone here for that. So that's why I go Pete Skoronski. That's my boy. I go Pete at 6, or I go Anthony Richardson.
Or trade back.
Or I wouldn't trade back. I'm taking A. Rich or Skoronski. And if Stroud's there, I would take Stroud.
I would take Anthony Richardson in this situation too, but I just don't think Detroit does, so that's why I took him off the board. Peter Skoronski, I'm also a big fan of. I wouldn't dislike that pick either. He was towards the top of the choices as well. I'm just trying to keep it realistic. I think it's in this situation it would be Witherspoon, Skoronski, Gonzalez, or trade back, honestly. And so I like Gonzalez. I like his athletic ability. He's one of the most athletic corners in this draft. But Devon Witherspoon's just got that dog in him. I
don't think he has. I think he might have dog in him, but it's a puppy. It's my dog. It's a Yorkie poo. That's the kind of dog. And I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't. But how is he this high? I don't see it. I didn't see it against any competition he went up against. The stats look nice, but you can look nice when you're not playing anyone with an elite passing offense.
So are you going to ding Deonte Banks as well?
No, because Maryland played in high-scoring games. They played against Ohio State. He's got better measurables than Devon Witherspoon does, and I look at his a 10 RAS score. He had a 10 RAS score, and we're ignoring that. We're ignoring that.
I
would take him at 18. I would take a cornerback at 18. I would. If any one of these guys fell at 18, I would take him.
So what I was going to do is I was going to take Tyree Wilson at 6, and I was going to target Deonte Banks at 18 because Deonte Banks is also one of my favorite players in this draft. And so that was what my plan was going to be. But, I mean, Evan took Tyree Wilson at 5.
I guess I ruined it. It's really my fault.
Yeah, he kind of brought it upon himself.
You made your
So,
self mad.
I will just say, just prepare yourself for this situation because I'm a fan of Witherspoon. I think that it'll be a great corner. But, yeah, I mean, this could be the pick.
I don't like the pick value. I don't like the player. If we took JPJ at 6, I would still be critical of the pick, but at least I could stomach it because I like the player. Witherspoon to me is fool's gold. I think he's fool's gold. He's small. He played at Illinois. He didn't go up against anyone. And quite frankly, I don't know what I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but I just don't know what I'm seeing. He gets me mad. I cannot have him at 6. He's my second least favorite player in this draft because of where he's projected to go. And you know who number 1 is. And if we take number 1, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my freaking mind. So Witherspoon's the pick.
I'm sad.
It's all respect. So
That's a good 20 minutes off the clock.
I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. I just want you to know that. I'm not mad at you, Tyler. But I hate Witherspoon at 6. If we trade it, let's say we trade back to like 11.
And we could.
And we took Witherspoon. I still don't like the player, but at least I could be like, all right, we got a little bit.
10.
We traded back. We got some additional value, and it makes a little bit more sense. I'm going to bring you into
Allen Park for a second, all right? I truly believe that if this was the case, they would move back because I think that they like multiple corners in this draft. I think the only way that Devon Witherspoon becomes the pick at 6 is if Tyree Wilson's gone, Will Anderson's gone, and they're almost forced to pick at 6 because they don't have any trade partners. And in this case, we're not trading. So in this case, this is kind of worst case scenario. I'm still a fan of Witherspoon. I wouldn't have a problem with the pick. I don't love the value, but if this is the case, I believe that they would move back or try to maybe move up at 3 while the Cardinals are on the clock and try to get in on Will Anderson. So we'll see what happens, but this was kind of the worst case scenario. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't play out this way, but
this is the nightmare scenario.
You guys are picking well, minus maybe Justin with the Colts.
Hey man, it's what they're gonna do. It's what's gonna happen.
You're testing Brad Holmes here, so we'll see what happens.
The thing is, Brad Holmes is the most likely GM to just finesse like up or down the draft board.
Yeah, he finds his guys that he likes, and then he uses all this extra capital that he acquires, and he shuffles up and down the board to get the guys that he likes. He's not going to sit and force himself to take someone he doesn't want. So, and that's why I don't think they're going to take a quarterback in this situation because I truly don't think they want one, even though I'm a big fan of Richardson. So
I think you're right. I think they'll be more aggressive than people are anticipating they will be.
Yeah.
I don't think they sit there at 6 and just take Witherspoon.
I think, like I said, in this situation, I think they'd move back, and then they would let the corner fall to them, or they would take someone else. Depending on wherever the trade back is. If they get good enough value, they can move all the way to the back end of the first round. I just think in this case, we're not making trades, so I took the guy that I think that they would take if these were the rules. So
I'm spot on.
All right. Well, that was about the entire show.
And we still have plenty more to pick.
I knew that was gonna create that.
That was gonna be so funny.
That's
what I wanted.
I stuck to my gun. So
it's okay.
It's funny and all that. I probably got the most mad at Peyton Thorne.
Your own guy. All right. We'll try and speed this up a little bit now. Now it's an interesting decision because I have the Raiders at 7.
And you got some quarterbacks available.
I do. There's quarterbacks available. I think Josh McDaniels loves that he has Jimmy G in his bag. Loves it because they're just trying to bring everyone who's a Patriot. Like Patricia did the Lions, now McDaniels doing it.
Yeah, this is the Patricia Bob Quinn 2.0, trying it in Vegas, seeing if it works with a different coach and GM.
I think so. In my mind, originally before this, I was thinking truly offensive line. I was looking at either Skoronski if he's there or Paris Johnson. To me, in my mind, those are the two that I was going between. But now, thinking about a quarterback needy team, you really don't have good backups. Mm-hmm. Did they sign Brian Hoyer? I think they did.
Regardless, I
But
think they're in the market. I think they could be in the
him.
market.
I don't trust. Yeah, I think especially if Richardson and Stroud are both there, at least you know you have one questionable, but you have one you probably can more so trust. And I think they love Jimmy G, but I think they know that they need someone truly for the future. I think that this contract is kind of the end of Jimmy G once he plays it out. No disrespect to him, and not that he can't lead him. But now that there's quarterbacks available, I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to take Stroud to the Raiders.
I think that's a home run pick for the Raiders. I mean, he probably will not fall this far.
No.
But I think that's a phenomenal pick. The only issue with Stroud, and this is my big beef with him, because he really, my opinion on him changed in that playoff game against
I remember
against
watching that
Georgia.
live.
But when I watch him against Michigan, it's like, okay, I feel like I'm seeing a guy who's not confident, who doesn't know where to go with the football. And then against Georgia, he was making every play known to man. So which version of C.J. Stroud are we going to get at the NFL level? I would like to think it's the Georgia one, but it's hard to say because in that offense, it's kind of pre-made for you. And that's why a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks have struggled. So having him sit for a little bit behind Jimmy G, I think it actually do him a lot, like a lot of good. But I like Stroud. I think he's got a lot to improve on, but ball placement's elite, accuracy's elite. I think he's more mobile and a better athlete than he's shown. I love that pick if I'm Vegas. I think that's a home run.
All right, to Atlanta, Evan.
Okay, so Atlanta is interesting because if you follow the draft odds, Vegas has Bijan Robinson as the favorite to go here.
Really?
Yes, which shocks me. I don't know why. I think the reasoning is Arthur Smith wants his Derrick Henry.
Or the reasoning could be this pick is so up in the air that someone just had to fly to the top of the odds, and so it's a wild card pick.
So Atlanta, they were 31st in sacks last year. They were 32nd in hurry rate and pressure rate. So they did not pressure the quarterback. They made a lot of additions to the defense this offseason, but none really on the defensive line.
Mostly secondary, yep.
Yep, so mostly in the back end. So I feel like the pick is an edge rusher here, but when I look at Vegas and they're telling me Bijan, I don't know where to go with this pick. So I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to take Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. I think with Nolan Smith, I think he's probably the other option there if you're looking at an edge rusher.
That's probably who I would have taken. But Van Ness or Nolan Smith would have been good picks here.
I think the thing with Van Ness is I like him as a guy similar to Hutch, but not in the same stratosphere. Mm-hmm. But a guy that maybe a little bit underrated as an athlete and just produced at a really good program in Iowa. I think Iowa produces really good defensive talent, offensive talent. I think they can get it done on both sides of the ball. And what I like about Lucas Van Ness, he's got that size, he's got that physicality. I don't know if Nolan Smith is going to translate that to the NFL. I think Nolan Smith is a little bit more sexy, has a little bit more flair. But I think Lucas Van Ness is one of those in the trenches guys, hard nose, will work for it. I think he's the kind of guy that you can build your defensive line around, and I like him going forward more than Nolan Smith. So that's why I'm taking the Iowa product, Lucas Van Ness. Wouldn't be shocked if the Lions were in on him too if they traded back. I could see them going with him if a trade back scenario happened. Why not add Van Ness? He's a really good football player, really good talent.
Absolutely. Well, now the team that gave up the number one pick,
Yeah.
Tyler. You have the Bears at 9.
Yeah, I'll make this one pretty quick because I know we're kind of taking a long time on each pick. I think this one's pretty easy. It's offensive line.
Yep.
I mean, they need to protect Justin Fields, that investment. They moved out of the first overall pick because that's their way of saying we're invested in Justin Fields. So they're going to invest in him with this pick, and they're just going to take Pete Skoronski. He can move up and down the offensive line, can play just about anywhere. Some people even say his best position might even be center, but you can play him at left tackle, right tackle. He can play either guard, so extremely valuable offensive lineman. I'm sure that they would be ecstatic with this pick. So yeah, so pretty self-explanatory.
I love Pete, so versatile, and I mean he's in the backyard. He's in their backyard. It makes so much sense. I think Skoronski is a phenomenal talent. He's one of my favorite players in this draft because of that versatility. It's not often that you can find a guy that can play both guard spots, could play both tackle spots potentially. I know physically he matches up more as a guard, but that versatility is rare in the NFL. And if he can play both positions, that is going to go a long way in terms of how an offensive line is shaped. And Chicago, they need it. Fields needs that protection. And they already added DJ Moore, so they don't have to worry about, reaching on a receiver here. They can build now through the trenches, which is what they need to do, and which they haven't done in a very long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Eagles on the clock.
This is the pick I hated more than any other one that I was given because
I think this is a great pick.
Everyone's like, Bijan, Bijan, Bijan. And I say no to Bijan. I'm sorry, Eagles fans. I'm saying no to Bijan personally. I know you lost Miles Sanders, who wasn't all that, honestly. He had his days. People really wanted him to be the next Saquon, and that just wasn't the case. They did resign Rashad Penny in the offseason. I think that's a great ad. I don't think running back is such a need for them. And I don't know why this shows that they need a receiver, because I think they don't truly need a receiver either. They got their tight end. I think, to me personally, you go on either side of the line or you go on the defense, whether it's a corner or a safety. I'm really looking at I feel like Christian Gonzalez screams Philadelphia. I know, there's a debate on taking a corner that high. I know
they're pretty expensive at corner right now, so they might wanna get cheaper there. They're paying Slay and Bradbury there, so
yeah, and they just lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Lions, so it's very unfortunate. So I mean, obviously, I like you. I love Deonte Banks too from Maryland. He's great. Don't sleep on Kalijah Cansey either there. But I think they go with, like you said, the cheaper version, but also the athletic ability alone for them. I thought about an offensive line because you know how Howie Roseman is. We talked about that before.
They love the trenches.
They love that. But I think if he's there, they take Skoronski. I agree. I don't think he will be there. I think they would probably take Skoronski just to keep Hurts, the man they just spent all their money on, with that extension. But I think they're going to take Christian Gonzalez at 10.
I think that's decent value.
I know once you hit 10, you're like, okay, now I'm okay with the corner.
I think it's decent value. You're right. I mean, they got destroyed against Kansas City in the Super Bowl through the air. So adding a guy like Gonzalez, rangy, athletic, and like Tyler said, that they're very expensive in the back end. They need to go a little cheaper there. I do think offensive line is in play too, but I like that pick. I'm on the clock with the Titans here, and I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. My favorite quarterback in the class, Anthony Richardson, he goes here. It makes too much sense for a team with an aging quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, a team with really no direction. Derrick Henry's getting older. They need a new face. They need something fresh. Malik Willis is terrible. Anthony Richardson, though, is not Malik Willis. He is the exact opposite. He has an absolute cannon for an arm. He's more athletic, more physical. I think he's got all the traits to be a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL. And you're seeing it, too. Florida, I think they were like one of the worst receiving teams. I think they led the nation in drops or were up there in drops. That offense wasn't really schemed for a short passing game. It was basically behind the line of scrimmage or long. And if it wasn't a passing play, it was mostly a running play. So,
well, you know what else is, you're adding an extra dynamic in that offense that they've never had before. And for Mike Vrabel, who loves to run the ball, and they have a running back who's aging and possibly, heading to that point in his career where he's not a bell cow anymore. Now they add a dynamic running quarterback that will take some pressure off of Derrick Henry and can add a whole nother dynamic to their running package. So, I mean, they added Malik Willis for a reason because they obviously saw that potential.
Yes.
But Anthony Richardson is a much better version, and he's actually a true quarterback. Malik Willis was more like just an athlete that played quarterback. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Richardson isn't polished and maybe not ready yet, but he can sit behind Ryan Tannehill. So, I mean, I think it's a good
So
4.43, 4.43 40 and a half inch vertical, 10.0 relative athletic score, So I think Titans
Perfection.
Titans fans would absolutely,
love it.
love
His
this
jersey
pick.
would fly off the shelves.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a difference maker. I do. And the only thing holding him back is poor coaching. He has all the ability in the world. He just needs the coaching. And Vrabel's, I think, a phenomenal guy to get him there.
Absolutely. Now, Texans back on the clock. They could do a lot with this pick.
Yeah, so they're pretty upset right now that they missed out on a quarterback after possibly having the opportunity to add Will Anderson and Anthony Richardson. They would have been winners of the draft with that. But we're gonna punt on quarterback, because that's what Evan decided to do with pick 2. So
Gotta punt on
we're
one.
not gonna stretch for a Hendon Hooker or anything like that. So
Please do.
I think one of the top needs for this team is a wide receiver, so that when they do get their quarterback, he's ready, and they already have a wide receiver 1 ready for him. Now the question is who, because there's a couple of receivers that, as we see on the board, Quentin Johnston and Jackson Smith-Njigba, that depending on who you ask, wide receiver rankings can differ. And I don't know what Evan's doing over here, but I'm guessing there's a guy that he's way more high on than another.
I know. I don't know if he's stressed about receiver, but I know there's definitely one he likes way more than the other.
So
I'm stressing right now.
I'm going to take...
Because they got Nico Collins, they just signed Robert Woods, John Mechie might be coming back. They have Dalton Schultz, right? They
traded away Brandon Cooks. And,
yes, they did.
And
gosh.
I think wide receiver is probably one of their biggest needs.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to take Quentin Johnston. Because he's a big body.
Okay.
He can go up and get it. But surprising, this is one of the most interesting things about Quentin Johnston is considering he's kind of like a contested catch, big-bodied kind of receiver, he's strangely, insanely good after the catch. So that's a trait that's very unique for someone his size. And, I mean, what better to have to draft a quarterback next season, to have a guy that you can just, throw a quick slant to him, and Quentin Johnston will do the rest, with that speed. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a great route runner, and, most people comp him to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he's probably the safer option, but I think Quentin Johnston has the most potential to be a true wide receiver 1, so that's why I took him.
No, I don't disagree with the analysis. I do have concerns about his ability to high point the ball and catch the ball for being such a big body. I think his hands are a concern, and it makes no sense because he literally has like the largest hands amongst wide receivers in the draft class. But I think he's got all the tools to be a pretty solid wide receiver in the NFL. I was stressing because you're on the clock at 13. I guess I kind of spoiled what I was feeling about the other wide receiver, aforementioned JSN. But I don't think New York goes wide receiver here. But you're on the clock, Justin. So
we might have to have a little bit of a dialogue here, because obviously Aaron Rodgers isn't officially a New York Jet, but everyone is already assuming that he is. So is that the context that you're drafting under, is with Aaron Rodgers?
I am drafting under that context.
Okay.
Truly.
I think you have to.
Yeah, you do.
I do too.
They brought the whole boat over for him, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes.
all his
It's
guys,
the New
all
York
his
Packers.
weapons. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. This is literally like a Patriots to Lions to Vegas to whatever situation. He's got all his guys. He asked for them, and he's like, keep the pick, whatever it is. Okay, but they can still make their pick, and they're not going to truly make it directly based on what Aaron Rodgers wants. Mm-hmm. They brought all his guys, all these weapons, everybody he could ask for. He's going to have a running back. He's got his receivers, and he has a young, great one in Wilson. And honestly, the defense has been really great. I think for what they're putting in, they want to keep Aaron Rodgers safe. So I think they boost up that offensive line.
Okay.
Now, my question would be debating. I think in my thoughts in recent drafts, Paris Johnson went a little before the Jets pick.
Yes.
Because more so in my mind, I believe. Let's see, what am I looking back on? I actually had surprisingly, where is he? Surprisingly, I had Broderick Jones from Georgia higher on this list. I know there's Anton Harrison they got here and Darnell Wright ahead of this, but I think Broderick Jones is a lot better than Darnell Wright and Anton Harrison. Now, given the fact that Paris Johnson is still here, I think after Skoronski, I think Paris Johnson is the best lineman in this draft, 100%. So, given the fact that he's here, I would take Broderick Jones, or what did I say? Broderick Jones higher if Paris Johnson wasn't here, but I'm taking Paris Johnson.
Okay.
In this factor.
So, I actually do not think Paris Johnson is the second best offensive tackle, but
Do you?
that's your pick. In my opinion, it is Darnell Wright.
Do you?
I really do. Yeah. I think he's going to go way higher than people think. I think most people think he's going to go between 15 and 20. I would not be stunned in the slightest if he's the first offensive tackle off the board, even though Pete Skoronski is more polished and more pro-ready. A lot of people really like Darnell Wright, and I think he'll be a great tackle. I think the only thing that's his problem is that he's a right tackle. He's projected to be more of a right tackle, and in the NFL, left tackles are extremely far superior in value to a right tackle. So I think that's the only thing that hurts him. But yeah, I mean they're all in the same clump, but I think personally, I think it's Skoronski, then Darnell Wright, then Paris Johnson. But Paris Johnson's a left tackle, so if you're there to protect Aaron Rodgers, left tackle makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I love that pick. I think Paris Johnson is a phenomenal prospect. Now, I was stressing because I think this pick is a home run pick for the Patriots. Jackson Smith-Njigba, when I look at what the Patriots have been successful at in the past, wide receiver is the last thing on my board. But when you look at Jackson Smith-Njigba, he is not a burner. He is not a guy that's going to beat you with his speed, but he is phenomenal in between the tackles. He's phenomenal, or I should say in between the hashes. I think this kid is going to be basically the Julian Edelman of the new era. They have Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Mike Gesicki. The Patriots have not been good at developing that big body outside receiver, but what they have been good at is developing guys that are shifty, that are quick, that are agile, and that can create space. JSN does all of that. I think this pick, with Bill O'Brien's new offense, it's going to be a completely brand new identity. JSN to the Pats at 14. You pair him with Juju. You pair him with Mike Gesicki or Mondre Stevenson. That offense looks a lot better than it did last year. And with Bill O'Brien's coaching, Mac Jones should take a step forward. And they need someone that's legitimate to help out Mac because he had nothing last year. Now you add in JSN, you add in Juju. I think that is a ton of fun now for the Patriots. And they'll be actually competent on offense. So I love JSN here for the Pats. And I was stressing because I did not want to take Quentin Johnston for the Patriots. I would be scarred to death if they took Quentin Johnston because they just don't develop big guys. They cannot develop guys that have that X-receiver kind of status. But what they can do is guys like JSN.
Getting that JSN jersey?
I would consider it.
Well, to Green Bay. At 15, the Packers. What do you got?
So this is a hard one for me. And actually, as I'm speaking right now, I don't even know who I'm selecting. So do we want to give Jordan Love some help? They never gave Aaron Rodgers any help at receiver. And the second he leaves, now would be the time that they would add an offensive pass catcher in the first round. But is it a receiver? Or, I mean, arguably one of the most talented pass catchers in this draft is staring me in the face. I'm going to take Dalton Kincaid here.
I like that pick. I do.
I think you would give Jordan Love a nice safety valve for a tight end, who's his comp is Travis Kelce. Now, he's not Travis Kelce, obviously. No one's ever going to be Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's arguably the best tight end in NFL history. But he's a pass-catching tight end, and he's extremely well-polished, and he's a quarterback's best friend. And what better to start this new chapter of the Packers' history than to help your young quarterback, inexperienced quarterback. You can't leave him out there with, I don't even know who they have at receiver. They don't even have
Christian Watson.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
that's
that's Christian
it, yeah.
Watson and Romeo Dobbs. And if Dobbs is your number 2 receiver, you're in some trouble. So we're going to add Kincaid here. Adds an extra element to that offense. And like I said, quarterback best friend. And I think Jordan Love and him will create a great connection. So
I love that pick. I was gonna say I thought you were gonna pick Michael Mayer, and I would have been like, a solid pick. But I think that's more of like a casual pick. Honestly, I think Kincaid is easily the best tight end in this draft class. When you saw what he did at Utah with Cam Rising, and specifically against USC. Now I know USC's defense was an atrocity, but when you're watching Dalton Kincaid play, he is always open. He is finding those spots. He is a phenomenal receiving threat. And I think when I look at Kincaid as opposed to Mayer, I like what Kincaid brings to the offense so much more than Mayer does. And Michael Mayer, not to say that he's a bad player, a bad prospect, but I think when you really look at who you want going forward, would you rather have a guy that's a better run blocker and is a decent, so-so pass catcher, or would you rather have a guy that's going to be a dynamic threat up the seams? I'm taking Kincaid all day.
So Kincaid's not going to block for you, but that's not what you're putting him out there to do.
Exactly.
You're wasting his talent putting out there to block. You're right. Mayer is more of a well-rounded, kind of not great at anything, but good at everything. So if that's what you're looking for, then Mayer might be your guy. But I agree. I think Kincaid is more valuable to the modern NFL offense than a balanced tight end. So that's what we're going with here.
Yeah, and the last balanced tight end that went high was TJ Hawkinson, and I hate Hawkinson. So I think you take a guy with the upside in Kincaid. I love that pick. That might be your best pick so far. That might be your best pick. I love that. I think that's a phenomenal pick.
On to the Washington Commanders at 16. New ownership in the works.
Yes.
Finally. New quarterback situation. Brissett, Howell. We'll see how that goes. There's a guy I want to take, but I feel like I shouldn't take him because they don't directly need him. It could benefit them. The guy I want to take would be Deontay Banks.
Okay.
The Washington man. Keep him in Maryland. But they need... It seems like they need some protection on the line. That's a higher value.
The thing about this pick is Washington isn't really set anywhere, so I don't really think you really draft for need. I think you kind of just draft what you think
the best
one of the best players
is
on the board is, in your opinion. So if you think Deontay Banks is one of the best players on the board, I think you take Deontay Banks because I just don't think they're in a position to be drafting for need. How are they even picking 16, honestly?
It's remarkable. The only player or position I wouldn't go here is receiver.
Oh, yeah.
Because with Scary Terry and Jahan Dotson,
you don't want to be spending all that capital on the wide receiver position when you have so many weaknesses.
Yes.
So.
Well, then I'm going to trust what I have on here, and then I'm going to take Deontay Banks. Otherwise, I probably would be looking at maybe Cansey, maybe Darnell Wright at this point, but I think Banks stays in the backyard like Skoronski.
We love that. So I'm on the clock here at the Steelers, and
I already know what's about to happen.
You're going to think I'm going to take Joey Porter Jr. here because he's in the backyard. Penn State, they need a cornerback to replace Cam Sutton. But when I look at who's available, Broderick Jones and Darnell Wright, the Steelers' offensive line fared better than it did, or I guess it fared better than what we expected them to do last year.
It's bad.
But it's not great. And they need someone that could really help Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris. They just traded for Allen Robinson. I think what they're doing is insulating Kenny Pickett with as much possible to really get the most out of him. And I would expect the same. They have picked 32 with the trade with the Bears. They trade away Claypool. They got picked 32. I think there's going to be some cornerback help there. I think they look at their board. They see Darnell Wright and Broderick Jones still there. And I'm going to take Tyler's analysis of Darnell Wright. I think they go upside here and they take Darnell Wright, tackle from Tennessee. It makes way too much sense to really emphasize Kenny Pickett here. Like, it just makes way too much sense. I get you need someone to replace Cam Sutton, but there's other picks to do that. And the Steelers, they're known to be one of those teams that loves to build in the trenches. So Darnell Wright, they go upside and they get a guy that will be under contract for several years, adding to that offensive pool of talent. So I love that pick for Pittsburgh.
So Detroit is up again.
Oh,
and
baby.
For the second time.
I know what you're going to say. Evan took your
Second
pick.
time Evan took my pick. So I think here would have been Darnell Wright. I mean, the Lions have shown a lot of interest in Darnell Wright. They've met with him at the Combine. They brought him in for a visit. They seem
I'm screwing Tyler over.
from what it sounds like, they're really interested in Darnell Wright. I think that he would be one of their top targets at this pick. I think that they would be a huge fan of moving him inside to play guard short term, for Vaitai. But long term, you move Panay to left tackle, move right to your right tackle, and now you got two bookend young tackles, and you can move on from Taylor Decker at the end of his contract. However, that's not the situation we're in anymore.
Evan, you ruined it.
And,
Sorry.
So I'm not going to make this pick, but I will say, if this situation presented itself, it would be 2 for 2 for Evan. I'm not going to lie. If this situation presented itself, Hendon Hooker could be the pick, but that's not who I'm going to pick here. That is not who I'm going to pick here. Because I do think, even though I said in my last pick that I don't think they'd take a quarterback, I think that one of the quarterbacks that they're most high on is Hendon Hooker, and he's also going to go higher than people suspect because he's a quarterback, but that's not who I'm going to pick here. Because I think at the end of the day, they would really like to add to this, defense as much as possible. So, I mean, I'm trying to look at what we got here. I mean, we already took our corner, so this is a tough pick. I'm not going to lie. I was expecting Darnell Wright to be there.
Evan said psych. You're expecting him to take Porter, and then...
Okay, so I'm tempted to take Brian Branch, but I don't think the Lions are going to take safety in the first round of the draft, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take Bijan Robinson in this selection. And personally,
go find him.
personally, I don't love taking a running back in the first round. However, Bijan Robinson is one of the most special talents we've seen at the running back position probably in the last 10 years. And he's not going to make it out of the first round, so someone has to take him, and the Lions want to run the ball like crazy. So
who's got it better than us?
I'm not going to lie, I'm not super in love with this pick. I'm not super in love with any of the Detroit picks because of Evan. I would have loved to have taken Tyree Wilson and Deonte Banks, or Tyree Wilson
Darnell
and Darnell Wright. I'm not such a casual that I'm taking Witherspoon and Bijan, but you forced my hand because you guys are drafting. You guys are drafting so well, and you're putting the Lions in such a tough spot. So, and I'm not gonna be unrealistic and take Anthony Richardson and Brian Branch because I don't think they're taking a quarterback and a safety. So I think that Bijan would be one of their top picks here, because I'm trying to look at like an edge rusher, and there's not the value in their scheme. Even though I like Nolan Smith, he does not fit the Detroit Lions. Myles Murphy he's good, but he's not anything insane. Brian Bresee, most people either love him or hate him. So I just couldn't pull the trigger on forcing my hand at an edge rusher. So I took the arguably the most talented player in the draft.
No, you're not wrong. He's very talented. And STJ Mock 1.0, we took Bijan at 18, but that was before free agency. So we did not know about David Montgomery becoming a Detroit Lion. And now that Montgomery is a Lion, running back in the first round makes absolutely zero sense to me. Look, Bijan, you're right. Bijan is phenomenal. He's going to be one of the top running backs in the league for a long time. But the value there, plus the capital you've already put in,
what would your pick have been? Just
my pick here,
maybe Kalijah Cansey.
Maybe Kalijah Cansey, but I think
the short arms could bother Brad Holmes.
Nolan Smith.
Nolan Smith doesn't fit their scheme, in my opinion. He's kind of a stand-up outside linebacker.
Miles
Murphy could be the pick, but that's
a little stretch.
It's kind of a stretch at this point.
No, I don't. You are backed up against a wall here.
2 times in a row.
How about you?
I'm not gonna lie.
You guys
have
really should have teed it up nicely for your guest to hit home
Make it
run
as hard as possible.
Make home run picks for the hometown team, but you guys are making me make the fans upset.
I got 2 points here, and then we'll move on. But because of what has played out here, I think this is generally pretty realistic on draft night.
Mm-hmm. Maybe besides the Will Levis.
Yes, but I think even so,
man.
I think C.J. Stroud probably goes 3.
Yeah.
And, it's a little bit of
we're
a
not far off of what the realistic situation is.
Because Will Levis may be the last one left. It could be him and Richardson.
But,
we like
but
Levis
let's
better.
go back to our point of Brad Holmes is going to move up and down the board, and in this case, we're not trading. So in this case, we're backing ourselves into corners to take picks that we probably don't love the value, and I don't think Brad Holmes would love the value for either of these picks either, so which is why I don't think if both of these situations play themselves out, the Lions may be moving up and down in day 1 of the draft.
And that's exactly why I'm going to say, if this played itself out, what is stopping Brad Holmes from trading away pick 6 and 18? Because if I'm the Lions here, I don't love what I'm getting in the first round. I really don't. I actually would hate this draft if I'm Brad Holmes because I'm not addressing any specific area of need right now.
Yeah.
Running back is not a position of need. Cornerback is not a position of need.
If they did this and they maybe packaged their 2 seconds, came back up to the first round, and maybe got JPJ, would that make your...
Look, that's the thing is, like, if this played itself out, Brian Branch and JPJ are both still on the board, and I like those guys. If I'm Brad Holmes, I would think they're in the same ballpark as
Brian Branch
Witherspoon.
plays the same role as C.J. Gardner-Johnson. If the Lions did not select C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I think Brian Branch is a lot higher on their board.
Right.
Because I think their long-term plan is to try to convince C.J. Gardner-Johnson to stay long-term.
Okay.
I don't think he wanted to sign a long-term deal after free agency didn't work out the way he had hoped. So I think that's the ultimate plan. So if that's the case... If you draft Brian Branch here, you are telling C.J. Gardner-Johnson you are a 1-year rental and we're not keeping you because their roles would be redundant.
Yes, and I agree. But I think when you look at who's available, Branch, JPJ, like if you wanted help in the secondary, those 2 guys are still there. And realistically,
we took Witherspoon.
Deontay Banks might not be there either, or he might be there too at 18. Like,
right.
Washington could go a completely different direction. Maybe they take Nolan Smith. Maybe they take Miles Murphy. Who knows? But I think just by playing this process out, you're seeing guys available at 18 that I don't think Witherspoon is significantly better than. Like, and that's why I don't want a cornerback at 6.
I get it. And just to be clear once again, this is kind of the worst case scenario. I kind of made the best of the situation, and I'm trying to keep some realism in it.
No, you're right.
And but I agree with you. If this was how it played out, they would have 2 talented players that we'd all be excited about and we'd all be hopeful about. And I know you'd hate the Witherspoon pick, but you'd still be interested to see how it played out.
I would.
However, we would all agree that these would be not the best values for pick 16 or for pick 6 and pick 18. And I agree with that. I don't think Devon Witherspoon is a top 5 player in the draft. I think he's a top 10 player in the draft, but still he's a corner, right? Positional value plays a factor. Bijan Robinson's a top 5 player in the draft, but he's not getting selected in the top 5 picks of the draft.
Right.
Probably not top 10. So I had some other guys with pick 6 and 18 in mind. I liked Tyree Wilson. I liked,
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. I liked Deontay Banks. I like Joey Porter Jr., but we already took a corner. I like Anthony Richardson, but it doesn't line up with what I think Detroit would do. So I'm just trying to play it in the situation that I think. I'm trying to keep my Brad Holmes cap on.
Yeah, so.
No, it makes sense. It's frustrating, but it does make sense.
So Tampa Bay.
Gosh,
and this is a weird pick too.
They just need a piece.
Yeah.
How are they restructuring? Because it's post Brady era. It's now the big show in the Tampa Bay. We'll see how long that lasts. I would really love them, honestly. I think it'd be great for them to take Kancey here, but I feel like they need everything.
So
I feel like they should protect whoever they have.
So Kancey next to Vita Vea would be insanely scary. I would say that would probably be the best interior defensive line in the league, bar none. So
it's tough because I think Kancey would be the great pick, but I feel like you really need to protect Baker. But I mean, their line.
Do you need to protect Baker though? I mean, it's Baker. I think they're cool if Baker breaks his leg. No, but.
Because they got Kyle Trask to back him up.
They do.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in a weird situation. They don't know if they want to rebuild, and they don't know if they want to keep trying to maximize this window. So
best available.
Kalijah Kancey.
I think that's.
I think that would be a scary defensive line for sure.
I think they'd have to take a side. Pick a side of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Pick side of the line. Pick someone you trust. I don't think they believe enough. Definitely not in Brian.
Yeah.
And I don't think they like Miles Murphy enough. I mean, and I don't think you want Anton Harrison or Broderick Jones. So you take best available. Take Kalijah Kancey for the Bucs.
All right, so the Seahawks are back on the clock here, and we already have Tyree Wilson. I think we're thrilled with that pick. I'm looking at who else is available here.
Got a lot of defense, man.
A lot of defense, and I still think Seattle's looking at defense here. I feel like Kalijah Kancey would have been a great snag for Seattle. Little disappointed that they're not going to get him here, but I still think they need edge help. And Tyree Wilson, what is he? Run first guy. He's going to be a great threat against the run. So I think they go Nolan Smith here. I think they double up on edge. Now you add the speed threat, one of the top prospects in the draft. Now you have a speedy guy off the edge. You pair that with a guy who's a little bit more stout against the run. Now I think you got a little bit of like a thunder and lightning combo on the defensive line. I think Nolan Smith here would make Seattle dangerous.
I just think the value is too good to pass up. Nolan Smith is probably a top 12 player in the draft. He is raw. He is kind of boomer bust, but he does kind of have a boomer bust, feel to him. But he has insane tools. I mean, what he run in the combine? He ran
4.39.
4.39. That is insane. That is the same 40 as Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez ran a 4.38. Nolan Smith ran a 4.39. And Christian Gonzalez has a 9.95 relative athletic score. So he's not just outrunning just the slowest corner out there. Christian Gonzalez is arguably one of the most athletic corners in the draft.
Yes.
Nolan Smith, edge rusher, has an extra 40 pounds on him. Ran the same 40. That's just insane. I think Pete Carroll would have fun with the speed of Nolan Smith on that defense, And
that's two physical specimens along the defensive line. You got Giannis wingspan in Tyree Wilson, and then you get this kid who's a track star on the edge. I mean, that's just devastating. And they're really solid in the back end, right? I mean, they have Tariq Woolen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting who else they have. I know they have somebody else, but
they got
Quandre Diggs.
Yep.
That's the other guy. And then
Bobby's coming back.
Bobby's back.
That defense is scary.
You had Murphy, or I'm sorry, you had Smith, you had Wilson. That's
Who else are we missing? Who's coming back?
From the defense?
Yeah, what's his name? I know he's getting kind of a letdown from the Jets.
Oh, Jamal Adams. Yes, he plays more of like a. He's kind of like a box safety now.
He's not what he used to be. He wanted the bag, and he got kicked out of New York, and that was it.
So the Chargers here.
Juicy.
This is another weird pick, but I saw a lot of, and I'm actually interested in this. I mean, he's not available at this point, but I've seen a lot of Bijan talk at this pick because Austin Eckler is asking for a trade because his contract demands are not being met. And Justin Herbert and Bijan Robinson, like,
plus with Mike Williams,
that would be a crazy tandem, but he's not available. So,
because of Evan. Or not because of
yeah.
Because of me.
All because of
Evan. But we're going to add, I think, in this case, we're going to add a wide receiver.
Yes.
Nice.
And I think we're going to take Zay Flowers in this selection.
Whoa.
Over
Okay.
Jordan Addison? I
Yes.
like it.
Okay. That's interesting.
I'm not a big Jordan
I like Zay
Addison
Flowers
fan.
better,
I'm
too.
going to be honest with you. But I see the potential in Jordan Addison. But Zay Flowers, I've seen a lot of talk that some scouts have Zay Flowers as the best receiver in the draft. He's quick. He probably plays best in the slot, which is probably what he would do here. Yeah, I mean, I just think that he'd be a good fit with Justin Herbert. So that's what we're going to do here. Let's see. He had 1,077 yards last year and 12 touchdowns. He does a little bit of everything. He's a longer guy who runs pretty quick and can make guys miss. And I just think that he would make that offense even better. Keenan Allen's getting up there in age. He's sticking around for now, but he's going to be out of there soon. So you need another weapon to be there with Mike Williams. So going to go with Zay Flowers here.
I like the pick. I think
like it
a
too.
slot guy would be nice for the Chargers. Zay Flowers is not the name I would have taken. I know Jordan Addison had a brutal combine, but when I look at the production on the field, and I look at the tape, he got open, soft, safe hands. For me, it's Jordan Addison, but I get the Zay Flowers appeal, and he does have a lot of Antonio Brown in him. He's gotten that comp a lot, so I don't dislike Zay Flowers there. I'm more of an Addison guy, just based off what I've seen on the tape, and it does help when you have Caleb Williams as your quarterback.
That's what I'm about to say. Caleb Williams biased. LA
so that
biased.
is very biased by me, but no, I think that's a very good pick, and you're right. Herbert has not had a slot guy.
Yeah.
Having a Zay Flowers, I think, would do him wonders.
Yeah. To the Ravens we go. The breakdown of an organization. Will Lamar be here? Will he not be? Are they going to draft in his favor to be like, come on, here you go. Here's another piece for you.
They added Odell.
They got Odell. Who's the other receiver they got?
Bateman.
Rashad Bateman.
Devin Duvernay, Mark Andrews.
They got those guys. Do they add another receiver? Interesting question. Because he doesn't throw so much. Or do they add someone to protect him? I don't know. I really don't know. To me, I want to take a receiver for Lamar because clearly they need somebody because they keep giving up on him. I know they did get Odell. They do have Bateman who's under there. They have some guys, but they've never had. I don't even think Odell will be, but I don't think they've ever had the guy. And I think that's someone reasonably that Lamar needs.
I'm going to be honest. The Ravens have held firm on their contract talks with Lamar, and the Ravens just come across as an organization that would not let the Lamar situation impact their pick.
Right,
I think they would just pick whoever they feel like the best pick is. If they think it's a wide receiver, they'd take a wide receiver, but they're not gonna they're not gonna use their pick to woo or do anything that affects the Lamar situation. They just seem like the organization that they'll just do what they see. They'll take the player that they see best. I mean, how exciting would it be if they, the top guy on the board, in this simulator, Brian Branch to pair with Kyle Hamilton, that'd be quite interesting.
I know.
But
I'm looking at that too.
two
I'm also looking
back-to-back
at
first-round safeties would be quite a.
but it's the
poor use of
Ravens.
picks.
But I'm also looking at Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to re-sign Marcus Peters since he's a free agent.
Yep.
Get a young talent in there. That's another factor.
Pairing with Humphrey, that'd be a very nice.
I know.
that'd be
So
very
there's
nice
a lot
addition.
of good options up there. So my like you said, if I'm going here, I'm not going to do what I would do. If I'm here, I think you take Jordan Addison because you need another weapon. But I think for the Ravens here, I'm going to take Joey Porter Jr.
I think that's a great pick.
You know I love JPJ. He's my guy. I want him in a Detroit Lions uniform. Hopefully they take my advice. They won't, though. All right.
'Cause they don't care.
They don't care about me or my wants and needs. But Minnesota's on the clock, and this is my least favorite player in the draft, and I'm going to take him, Hendon Hooker. I think the Vikings do it.
There's been a lot of talk about
I
them.
think they
and
do it.
Trade Lance trades.
And
too.
let me
That's
give
what
you
I'm
some
talking about.
justification for it. I think Hendon Hooker stinks. Let me tell you that. I think he's horrible. That's a very QB-friendly situation in Tennessee.
I got to go find him.
That offense was basically scripted for him. And when you have two NFL wide receivers in Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, you are basically gifted the easiest offense ever to thrive in. Now, what I will say about Hendon Hooker is he's maybe one of the more ready quarterbacks because, quite frankly, when you're 25 years old, you need to be ready. And I think what Minnesota would like about him is he probably possesses some similar traits to Kirk Cousins, except you're not paying him Kirk Cousins money. And having a quarterback like Hendon Hooker who can probably sit a year behind Kirk still even, or take the reins completely, who knows. But allowing him to just come in and replace Kirk, basically be ready right away. You get to extend Justin Jefferson. You'll be able to execute other team needs. Minnesota has a ton of needs, but they're not going to be able to get it done if they keep having to pay Kirk Cousins, $35+ million a year. If they don't go with a quarterback here, if they don't go Hendon Hooker, if they don't trade up, I would expect them to probably invest in the offensive line, maybe the secondary, because their passing defense was one of the worst in the NFL. But I think they just find their long-term solution here in Hendon Hooker. And let me tell you, I hate Hendon Hooker. I think he is a terrible prospect, but it makes sense for Minnesota. So I'm going to take Hendon Hooker here against every fiber in my body.
Another Teddy Bridgewater era.
I mean, it makes sense. The Minnesota Vikings, they're also in the same kind of boat that like Tampa Bay is in, where they aren't sure if they want to rebuild or keep going for it. And eventually this salary cap situation is going to catch up to them. So this Hooker pick does make sense because it's their way of fixing their cap situation. They're essentially just drafting a cheap Kirk Cousins, and that way they can continue to, give extensions to their veterans. At some point, Justin Jefferson is going to get a otherworldly contract, and they're not going to be able to keep that band together. They just trade a second-round pick for Hawkinson. They don't want to let him go for nothing. So, I mean, the pick actually makes sense for where they're at the franchise because he's pro-ready, and, I mean, he's not going to be ready day one because of the injury, but he'll be ready to start probably by year two when they inevitably maybe want to trade or move on from Kirk Cousins. So,
and it feels like they hit their ceiling after a 13-4 season. You lose a home playoff game to the Giants. It just feels like now's the time to transition into a new era of Vikings football. And I don't think Hendon Hooker's the guy, but you're kind of pigeonholed here where you got to take someone that can
you either got to blow it up or you got to
era.
make a pick like this and kind of do a light reset. So.
Yep. So against my wishes, against my will, Hendon Hooker is a Viking.
On to Jacksonville.
So Jacksonville lost Jawan Taylor to the Chiefs. So I'm going to make this nice and simple. I'm going to take offensive lineman Broderick Jones from
Slipped
Georgia.
all the way down to 24.
Probably, should have been a top 20 pick. So we're going to get good value here and protect their franchise guy in Trevor Lawrence.
I like it. Couple picks left. I got the Giants at 25. They could use some help on defense, and I love Brian Branch sitting there. It's really tough for me not to take him. I really want to right now take Jordan Addison because I really feel like Danny Dimes needs a weapon Like, he does. I get they just got Waller, which is a great addition for them, but they lost everybody at receiver. They lost everybody.
They even lost Kenny G.
Galladay sucked.
Tears shed
The one
about
guy who
Kenny
started
G.
showing out, he tore his ACL. They gave up Tony for him to go win a Super Bowl. I think Brian Branch would be the great pick, but I'm going to take Jordan Addison.
I think it's a no-brainer. I think the Giants have to address that wide receiver room, especially because when you don't have a wide receiver, that limits the effectiveness of Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, Daniel Jones, too. Everything was so dink and dunk last year. You need someone that can actually create.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had that in so long. Since Odell, really.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right, so America's team, I have the pleasure of
Gross.
drafting for the Cowboys. And I think, I'm not going to say they go off the wall here, but I think they do something a little interesting. And I'm going to take linebacker Drew Sanders out of Arkansas.
He's good.
I think, look, when you look at what they need defensive help. This guy can go sideline to sideline, and they're fine up front. They might need a defensive tackle. I think you can find that later. I don't think Brian Brisset is really this tremendous talent. You know, I think he's probably a first round talent, but I don't think Dallas goes with him here. Drew Sanders, he gives them a nice pairing next to Leighton Vander Esch, and it just feels like a Cowboys pick, like having that freaky, athletic linebacker who just runs the field. It just feels like a Dan Quinn guy. So Drew Sanders is my pick for the Cowboys.
So I only have one issue with this pick, and it's because Drew Sanders' most comparable comp is Micah Parsons. So that's my only concern, is I feel like they play a similar role in the fact that Drew Sanders rushes the passer really well for an inside linebacker, and so they would play a similar kind of role. That's my only concern. If you're trying to go for like a cover linebacker, I think you'd go for Trenton Simpson. But, hey, I mean, Drew Sanders and Micah Parsons coming at you from each side of the edge, that would be pretty scary, you know, and they still got, you know, Lawrence coming from the outside at defensive end, so, you know.
I just think when you give Dan Quinn all these chess pieces, he's going to find a way to make it work. And Drew Sanders just feels like that kind of guy. That he just feels like a cowboy to me.
Yeah.
He's like a little thinner Vander Esch vibe. To me, this man right here screams Cowboys. I don't know what about it. I don't think they'll take him, but B.J. Ojulari, the edge out of LSU, something about him screams Cowboys to me. Just like the energy, just the vibe. Just
no,
like,
you're spot on.
All right, to Buffalo.
Yeah, so this one's a little interesting.
They need a revival.
But I think I've made up my mind already. And I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs here.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay, interesting.
Because Bijan doesn't make sense here, because the Buffalo Bills do not run the ball as much as any team in the NFL. They're they use the running back less than almost everyone in the NFL.
Yes.
And maybe that's because they don't have a good running back, but I think it's just because their offense is just built around Josh Allen being everything for them. However, Jahmyr Gibbs is a fantastic pass catcher. So although Bijan's also a good pass catcher, Jahmyr Gibbs can line up as a slot receiver, and I just feel like he's a more polished receiver out of the backfield. So that's who I'm going to go with here, because I think that there's an extra element to this offense that he could unlock, and they don't have a whole lot of holes to where I feel like they can afford to take a slight luxury pick here. And to me, it just makes a lot of sense because of just his pass catching ability. That would create a lot of relief for Josh Allen to be able to just dump a pass off and just have a guy just, you know, run it 40 yards for him. That would take a lot off of Josh Allen's, you know, shoulders. So I like that pick here.
Did you have something to say?
Not
Or are you going out just to pop
Not
the mic
really.
off?
I mean, the thing with Jahmyr Gibbs is, and I do feel like there's a little bit of momentum for him to be a first-round pick, But my issue with Jahmyr Gibbs is it feels like he has a similar skill set to James Cook. And they did spend a third-round pick on him last year. So I'm wondering if, if they're just ready to just give up on James Cook almost, because I don't really feel like they complement each other that well. I feel like they have very similar skill sets. The issue with James Cook is he's not Jahmyr Gibbs.
Right.
So I think you're effectively replacing James Cook, and you still need someone that can go in between the tackles. And now, if you want to rush Josh Allen, if that's your guy that you want to get the tough yards with, go ahead. But I just would have concerns about risking him long term.
Honestly, to me, that's not much of a concern because James Cook is not going to be a feature back. He can't run between the tackles. So quite honestly, last year you took because the Buffalo Bills are in such win now mode. I honestly don't think if they kind of threw away a third round pick last year to possibly make a giant upgrade, I don't think that it would be a massive concern for them. They don't complement each other, but they can substitute for each other and play similar roles. So James Cook could ultimately be your, Jahmyr Gibbs, replacement for a few snaps, right? But ultimately, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just a much better version of James Cook. So.
I agree. I'm like, that's the thing is like, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is really good, and that's where it gets tricky is like James Cook and Jahmyr Gibbs kind of similar. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just like a smaller version of him, but obviously much more dynamic. And, I mean, what does Buffalo really need? I think maybe an offensive lineman, but do you love who's available there? I'm not sure. So I don't hate the pick of Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think Buffalo fans would hate it either. I just, like, if I'm Buffalo and I'm asking myself, I draft Jahmyr Gibbs, what do I do with James Cook? That's the only question I ask myself. But I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot, and I think that's a good pick.
To the Bengals.
Your team,
I
really.
love the Bengals. Joe Burr, my guy. I'm kind of make this short and sweet. I think they definitely could take Murphy. They could take Brisset or Breesy, whatever you want to call him. I know they would love probably to maybe take a Michael Mayer tight end, but I know they signed Irv Smith, so I'm not worried about that. I think back end of defense after losing Von Bell and Jesse Bates is a huge concern. I love Cam Smith, the corner from South Carolina, but I think you take best available and a great fit in Brian Branch.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
That's a slam dunk.
That's a perfect pick. I mean, it's just you let Jesse Bates walk and sign a massive contract with Atlanta. You let someone else pay him, and then you just replace him with Brian Branch, and you get him for a fraction of the price. And yes, he's not going to be Jesse Bates right away, but he definitely can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's if I'm Cincinnati and Brian Branch is who I get, you just added Daxton Hill last year. You're hoping for him to develop more because he really didn't play a feature role. So you add him, you add Branch. That's a young secondary now that you're not paying a ton of money for. And that back of the defense, you expect to be shored up, especially after losing such a talent in Jesse Bates. Yeah, adding Brian Branch would be unreal. So the Saints are on the clock here, and I do not envy the Saints in the slightest. They're in one of the weirdest and worst positions that they could be in as a franchise. My issue with this pick is I don't really know where to go. And I could just go best player available. They need help everywhere on the defense. And it feels like Myles Murphy has fallen just a tad. So I'm going to go with Myles Murphy here. He's versatile. He's got some skill. And he's maybe a little raw. Maybe has some room to grow in. But they were 29th in pressure rate and hurry rate. This team needs someone that can get after the passer. And Myles Murphy surely can be that guy. You pair him with Cameron Jordan. That could be very nice for a couple years.
You forget the fact that they just lost Marcus Davenport.
That
in
is
free
true.
Agency,
Yes,
so you
that is true.
replace him. And, if this was the case, I think Murphy would be the pick. I think the only reason Murphy has fell at this point is because I feel like we've overdrafted a few players like Hooker, Sanders, Jahmyr
Yes.
Gibbs. A couple of guys that probably went a little earlier than they then the experts and mock drafters online are projecting.
But that's how the draft goes.
That doesn't mean that's not what's going to happen, right? Someone's going to fall every year, right?
Yes.
That we don't expect, and it could be Miles Murphy. But Miles Murphy in some mocks you see going top 12. So I think I think you're kind of underselling this value. I think that the Saints would absolutely love this pick. I think if Miles Murphy was there, I think that they'd be really happy with it.
Okay, I probably wasn't doing him justice, honestly, but my issue is not even with the player. It's more so the Saints. They just frustrate me as an organization. I don't really know what direction they're going in. They signed Carr to this massive deal when I really don't think he gets them anywhere. They're just in an odd spot. So it's more so I hate picking for the Saints more so than the player they get, because if they got Miles Murphy, I think I do think that's a pretty good ad.
Yeah.
It's just this team is so you know. They're so gross.
All right, Philly.
All right,
30.
well,
Back on
this
the
is
clock.
my last pick.
That was Evan's last pick.
It was. What a way to end it.
And there's one player that's kind of standing out to me. He's not on the big board here, which I'm kind of surprised by. But he's kind of standing out to me, and it seems like a Philly thing to just take value, especially when it's a big guy.
Oh.
And so I'm taking Osiris
I knew
Torrance
it.
here. To most people, he's a clear and away first round pick. He's definitely the best true guard in this draft. And the Eagles, even if they don't play him right away, which they can because he's a day one ready-made plug and play guy, but if they don't have a spot for him in their starting five, that's completely cool. Philly has no problem with sitting a D lineman or offensive lineman on the bench, playing him as kind of like a six-man rotational guy, and then grooming him to be a key contributor going forward so that they don't have to continue to pay big money. That's what Howie Roseman loves to do in the trenches. This seems like a true Philly pick here. If this were to happen, they just take advantage of the value.
I love that pick. I'm a big
too.
Osiris Torrance fan.
Big dog.
Some would say, do you shore up another area of need? I just don't see it. I think Philly, I think their biggest need left is probably the offensive line. And I think Osiris Torrance is that guy. Mm-hmm. So I love that pick for Philly. I think that's a phenomenal pick.
All right, the last pick of the first round. Chiefs on the clock. Let's do this collaboratively because
okay, I like that.
I had we each had 10 picks. There's one extra. What are some thoughts? Because honestly, I was just gonna have a fun pick. I wasn't literally gonna take it serious. I was just gonna have a fun pick and just do whatever. So, what are your guys' thoughts on the Chiefs?
So, what does Andy Reid love most in his offense? His offensive skill players, more specifically. I mean, he lost Juju and Hardman in free agency. So, personally,
Speed.
I'm not the biggest fan of this player, but to me, Andy Reid would be far and away the best person to get the most out of this talent. So, I think you all know where I'm going.
I think so.
It's Jalen Hyatt for me. To me, that's like a true Andy Reid pick of like, let me just take this speedster and I will groom him into being a, dare I say, Tyreek Hill caliber kind of replacement.
Like a him mixed with McCole Hardman kind of vibe.
So that's my vote. I'm not trying to dominate the conversation here, but that just seems like the most chief. Pick to me. But maybe you guys think otherwise?
No, I'm kind of in lockstep with you in terms of the player profile. I do think there is heavy interest in Zay Flowers. You heard the reports or may have seen the reports that Patrick Mahomes wanted to throw with Zay Flowers. They brought him in specifically to throw with Patrick Mahomes. So it's interesting, that Zay Flowers went before we could even have a chance to discuss him in Kansas City. So I do think receiver's a big area of need. I mean, look, Kadarius Toney, he's all right, but you need somebody other than Travis Kelce, and Jalen Hyatt can be that guy. So I like Jalen Hyatt here.
I was going to say, just picture Jalen Hyatt, because he's not the most crisp route runner. And one of the biggest, complaints about the Tennessee offense was that they just kind of didn't really run routes. They kind of just ran past
Streaks.
everyone. But picture this, Jalen Hyatt just running downfield, and either you have Patrick Mahomes, one of the best quarterback in the league, throwing a wide open touchdown to Jalen Hyatt running deep, or you're opening up the middle of the field for Travis Kelce to work even more with more room. To me, it just screams like Andy Reid would be running this card up to the podium. That's just
If
how
he
I think.
can.
I agree, and I don't even love Hyatt as a player.
Neither do I. But to me, it seems like Andy Reid would be the best fit for Jalen Hyatt.
I agree.
And, yeah.
Justin, what are your thoughts?
I don't disagree either. What are you guys' thoughts on Josh Downs?
I like Josh Downs. He's a little bit more of a technician. He's very similar to like Jordan Addison in the fact that he's able to get open. He's not physically imposing, and he's got good hands, right? But he's not going to wow you with his athleticism or his, any other, facet of his game. He's just a really good route runner, knows how to get open, and will catch the ball. And I feel like, in a sense, they have that in Kadarius Toney. I think Jalen Hyatt would give them the outside guy, and I think Toney can more so work inside.
Absolutely. I don't disagree. I like it too. Because I feel like unless I see someone to me on on the defensive line that they really love that's sitting there, I think that's a great pick.
It sucks that Hyatt ran a 4.4 40 at the combine. That's really disappointing. Most people thought he'd run in the 4.2s. If he ran in the 4.2s, there would be no question he'd be a lock to be a first-round pick.
Yep.
But the fact that he kind of ran a lot slower than people thought, that's why he's a fringe first-round guy for most people. But like I said, just Andy Reid feels like the perfect fit for him.
If you turn on the game film, and Hyatt's running past everyone, and I know it's just seam routes. It's just fly routes. It's not anything impressive, but you cannot doubt the game speed is there with Hyatt, and I do think Andy Reid would love having a guy with that physical ability to just dominate the back end of a secondary so that you can have Travis Kelce even more open than he constantly is.
All righty. Well, it is completed. We took Jalen Hyatt, 31 to the Chiefs.
Did we want to talk about our sleepers for the
Oh,
draft?
yeah.
Yes.
Before we rip through.
Yeah.
Or let me rip through this first. So the
Yeah.
official draft for STJ is the 2.0. Is this 2.0?
2.0 and final.
Final draft.
We had our
got
pre-free agency mock, and
Yes.
now our
no trades.
under a week, no trades, final mock. It has been incredible.
So at 1, the Panthers take Bryce Young. 2, Texans take Will Anderson. 3, Cardinals take Jalen Carter. 4, everyone hates it, the Colts take Will Levis.
Ooh.
5, Seattle takes Tyree Wilson. 6, the Lions take Devon Witherspoon. 7, the Raiders take C.J. Stroud. 8, the Falcons take Lucas Van Ness. 9, the Bears take Peter Skoronski. 10, the Eagles take Christian Gonzalez. 11, the Titans take Anthony Richardson. 12, the Texans take Quentin Johnson. 13, the Jets take Paris Johnson. 14, the Pats take JSN.
Yes.
15, the Packers take Dalton Kincaid. 16, the Commanders take Deontay Banks. 17, the Steelers take Darnell Wright. 18, the Lions take Bijan Robinson. 19, Tampa takes Kalijah Cansey. 20, the Seahawks take Nolan Smith. 21, the Chargers take Zay Flowers. 22, the Ravens take Joey Porter Jr. 23, the Vikings take the juicy Hendon Hooker. 24, the Jags take Broderick Jones. 25, the Giants take Jordan Addison. 26, the Cowboys take Drew Sanders. 27, the Bills take Jahmyr Gibbs. 28, the Bengals take Brian Branch. 29, the Saints take Miles Murphy. 30, the Eagles take the big fella Osiris Torrance. Excuse me. And 31, the Chiefs finally take the speedster Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. And that is the official draft of STJ, featuring Fueled by Motown. Shout out Tyler. We will post this on all our socials afterwards so you guys can check it out. But after this long episode, before we close it out,
One sec, though.
Okay.
I want to know which team has your favorite haul?
Out of what we did?
After what we've done, I want everyone's favorite haul. And don't pick your own team that you drafted for.
Okay. What team is the best haul?
Yeah, what's your favorite haul out of all the teams we drafted? Who do you think at the best value, or your favorite player, good landing spot? I just want to hear it after all this work we've done.
Well,
I got two different ones.
I really like the JSN pick, but that's not going to be my selection. That's kind of
We're big Pats
just a shout out.
here.
But I think
Yes.
that the fan base that would be the walking away the most excited would easily be the Tennessee Titans. They would be walking away with Anthony Richardson, and to me that just I don't think anyone would be expecting that, and that'd be the best pick in my opinion. So they'd be the winners of day one.
I feel like name base, a lot of people would be loving, except for the QB situation, would be loving the Houston Texans situation with the guys they got. I would argue, though, also that Seattle got a nice duo.
Yeah.
Two edges, one with we talked about the length, the other with the speed, and they really need
That was going to be
badly.
my number two because obviously I'm a big Tyree Wilson fan, and Nolan Smith at pick 20 is just incredible value.
That's insane.
It's hard to argue. Like I said, I picked the Tennessee Titans because quarterback's just that valuable. But if we're just picking truly the best selections, it was Seattle.
I also don't hate. It's a little. I'm kind of connected to it, but I don't hate the Eagles either. They got their replacement on a cheaper deal, and they got a great guard to carry them for a long time, too.
I do like the Eagles. My favorite is honestly, and I don't know how I've come to this conclusion because it is so anti-me, but I am loving Dalton Kincaid to the Packers. I think that is a I could see that working so beautifully. And it hates me to say it because I really don't want the Packers to have any success. And I'm not really a big, tight end guy in the first round, but I think everything that he brings to the table and just the way it's kind of framed with Jordan Love, having a safety net, having a guy that's always open, having the receiving upside of a Travis Kelce, Kincaid is just he is that, and it's puzzling to me that I'm in love with this guy. I'm not a big tight end guy in the first round, but I think he brings it, and
that pick just has you feeling some type of way.
It has me feeling some type of way. I really liked that pick. I like the landing spot. I like the pick. The other one is obviously Joey Porter Jr. to the Ravens. I mean, that's my guy.
Pick your own pick.
No, that was Justin's pick. Yeah, that was Justin's pick.
He's biased.
It basically is my pick because anywhere Joey Porter Jr. goes, I'll be a fan of. But I love that pick as well. I think that's a good spot for him to land.
Evan's such a Spartan fan that is like a diehard Penn State player fan.
I love Penn State. I shouldn't say I almost went there. But I applied and, got in, but I didn't go there, obviously.
Yeah, you stayed
but
home.
I stayed home. But
Stayed true, man.
if I was going anywhere else, it would have been Penn State. So I got a little soft spot for Penn State.
So we're going to do sleepers here?
Yeah.
To close it out, we're just going to drop a sleeper. If you have another one where you're like, I kind of like these two are my guys, we can shout them out. Who wants to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Go first, Justin. Let's see it.
Okay. This individual has a lot of versatility on the offensive side to me. I was actually going to pick him as just my fun pick for 31 before I was like, I'll suggest this. And it is indeed Darnell Washington. I don't think he's another Kyle Pitts, but I think he does have a lot of versatility at the tight end. He is a good receiver. He's got good hands. He's for being 6'7", 270, it's pretty wild his ability in his movement that he can do. Just after the catch, He can miss tackles. He's a pretty decent route runner, and I think he's just a great X factor versatility piece.
You forgot his most important factor. He's the best blocking tight end in the draft by a landslide.
Yep.
He's arguably an offensive tackle that can just catch.
Yes.
So yes, he has the versatility to play to catch passes, which is why he's so great. But whatever team lands him, you are essentially going to be playing with an extra offensive lineman every time he's out there, with the possibility of him being able to slip out and catch passes, which is why I would absolutely love for the Detroit Lions to try to snag him with their first pick in the second round if he's available, because he is exactly what Dan Campbell would want in a tight end. I mean, Dan Campbell himself was a blocking tight end, so do you not think that he respects the importance of blocking in your tight end?
And we love a good line.
and they want blockers for that man, David Montgomery, and that man, Bijan Robinson in this case. And
that'd be man. What
better?
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's a great pick right there.
So I feel a little dirty because we've talked about him. Jayden Reed, obviously, I feel like is a great sleeper. But the one that I have been riding for so long is Tajay Spears, running back out of Tulane. It is otherworldly what he can do when he gets into the open field. He has great bursts. He's a great technician with the football in his hands. I love what he brings. He's a good receiving back. He's more of a third round pick, but I think this running back class is so deep, but it's filled with so much talent. And when I look at Spears, I see a guy who isn't going to be, a bell cow back. He's not going to be a guy that you're handing the ball off to 25 times a game. But what he can do with the ball in his hands, he doesn't need to have the ball that many times. I think he's a great, I'm not going to say a complimentary piece because I think he can be the number one back on a team, but I don't think he's more of the Lightning, and he's going to need somebody else to be the Thunder. He kind of reminds me of like a smaller Austin Eckler, but much more dynamic and much more electric. So Tajay Spears, he's been my guy. We talked about him when we did our first mock, or when we went over the Senior Bowl.
Yeah,
and I just love his talent. I know he's a little trendy, but we've been a big Tulane, pod, and we've been talking about Spears for a while now. So it's no secret that he is my big sleeper, Tajay Spears, running back Tulane. I love his potential.
Late round, great pick.
So I'm going a little bit deeper because Darnell Washington, he's probably a second round guy. Spears, he's probably a second or third round guy. I'm going with a guy that most people are projecting to be like a fifth or sixth round pick. Ooh. But I am just a big fan of what I saw. I mean, I'm not going to act like I've watched hours and hours of film on him.
Teasing us with this,
but I'm a big fan of D. Winters, linebacker, TCU. He arguably had the greatest single performance for a linebacker that we ever seen in the playoff against Michigan, where he took that game over. Michigan could not do anything. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't pass the ball. D. Winters had a pick six that game. He was everywhere, and Michigan couldn't seem to have an answer for him. Now, he's projected to be a late-round pick because that was far and away his best game, and he's very inconsistent, and he's very raw, and he's mostly just a firecracker who just storms through the line, and he either makes a great play or he makes a big whiff. So he's going to need some time to probably play some special teams and work his way up the depth chart. But, man, that game in the playoff was just insane. I just remember watching him. I'm like, who is this guy? How come I've never heard of him? And how come how come he's not being talked about as a top pick in the draft? And then I realized, that was probably the highlight of his college career. But you saw what he can do. He took over that game. So I just think that if he goes to the right team, he could be a special player in time.
He ran a 4.49. He's got great speed. And, yeah, I think, I remember watching that game, and I was just I was just absolutely amazed by what was happening.
It was crazy.
So yeah, D Winters. I mean, he really pulled that one.
I mean,
Out of nowhere. That's a phenomenal pull because he did show out in that game, and I mean that's sometimes all it takes is one game to really make a name for yourself.
Like college hoops.
Exactly.
I don't know. Those are great sleepers. I mean, any of those guys can have a great ceiling. So we'll see.
I know. I feel a little dirty taking Spears. It's just like,
all your bias. Oh, I mean, and maybe the Tulane guy. Oh, well, I'm gonna pick him over the Spartan guy.
yeah.
You're the only two helmets on your side of the table.
I did have another guy, but I didn't want to mention him for personal reasons.
What? Someone's gonna take him?
No, well, the other guy I was thinking about was Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. I don't think
the receiver?
I don't think he's got enough love. I've liked what I've seen from him analytically. There's some stats that show that his skill set translates to the next level. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's like a separation stat, and he was ranked not next to JSN, but he was ranked up there. Marvin Mims is one of those guys that I think you'll find him in the third round. Maybe he sneaks into the second, but probably the third round. And I think he's going to be a nice piece. And I would not be surprised if the Lions took him because he can be a deep threat. And with the JMO suspension, you probably need to add someone within the first 3 rounds. So I think Marvin Mims could be that guy.
I like him. He's probably sitting around that same. I feel like him, Downs, and maybe Xavier Tillman are kind of all just sitting in a little bucket.
Cedric
together.
Tillman?
Yeah, my bad. I said
Xavier X, baby.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this long one. But
We had
I
to make
mean,
up for last week.
Yeah, we had to make up for last week, so now it's all equal time. Everything's even, and it's worth the watch because it's worth the time, and it's what we love. And
If
it's the
you're draft
NFL
nuts,
draft.
yeah.
It's a great time. It's a great time of year. This is like I said, I've been saying each week. This is the most excited I've been to see any kind of football back probably in my life. So I'm excited for it. Thank you guys. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us.
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Of
It was
course.
a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun preparing for
Yeah, I
it.
know. I could tell.
Yeah, Tyler absolutely hooked us up. So many sheets of paper, but so much information. We love to see it because we needed it. At least I needed it. I mean, I was prepared, but not this prepared. This is next level preparation. You just love to see it. You love the dedication.
If you ever want to have me back during the off season and we can talk about the draft after the fact,
Yeah, post,
Maybe we
definitely
will.
do that.
Post
Maybe
thoughts.
after the draft is over. Let's do it.
post thoughts. Post thoughts.
We got nothing else to talk about really. With
I know. We're pretty much bouncing between this and golf while the
Yeah.
NBA playoffs get through.
we already made our snoozer picks, which were just incredible, weren't they?
Yeah. A good quick 30-minute episode last week. It's cool. Anyway, follow us on all the socials, STJ Sports Betting. Follow Tyler on Twitter. I will have at FueledByMotown in the link below. Go give him a shout out. Go give him some love. Go give him a follow. Go give him some likes. Check out his thoughts on the draft. He'll probably be tweeting next week or so about it and live during the draft.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed our draft picks. Give us your thoughts, who you're rooting for from everybody, and shout out your hometown teams. But thank you guys for watching or listening. Subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, likes, comments, all that. It's a long one. I'm not going to keep you anymore. So thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week on Squeeze the Juice. Peace.